Isn't that a powerful story today? This parable about forgiveness. So before we talk about that, let's talk about this first reading. It's from the book of the prophet Daniel. And there's this guy named Azariah. So Azariah is one of the three. You might know him by the other name that he goes by, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Have you ever heard of them before? Or if you've ever watched VeggieTales, Rack, Shack, and Benny, when they had to bow down before the giant chocolate bunny or whatever. If you remember Nebuchadnezzar. It's a great, great story if you ever want to watch that one. I watched that when I was in high school. It was so much fun. But so Azariah is Abednego. This is his other name. And this is when they've been thrown into the fiery furnace. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar didn't really like the fact that they weren't going to bow down before the chocolate bunny, so he threw them into this fire. But did they get burned in the fire? No, they were walking in there, praising God. The Lord had watched over them. And this is the prayer that they were praying. So this is what he was saying in there. If you ever wanted to know, what did they say when they're walking around in that fiery furnace? This is what they were saying. And one of the things that he mentions here is he says, please forgive me because I did something that wasn't right. Now, remember that they did something right in not bowing down before the chocolate bunny, or in this case, some sort of idol or big statue or something like that. But Azariah reminds us that it's always important for us to look in our heart and see what are the things that we need to be sorry for. Because if we say, I don't have anything to be sorry for, then it means that our heart is closed, because every single one of us has something that we need to ask God for forgiveness, or to ask one another for forgiveness. And it's always good just to, each day, to just kind of look in our heart and say, Lord, where's the area that I need to ask forgiveness? Now, the gospel is about forgiving. And what happens when we don't forgive? So the first reading was about us telling someone, I'm sorry. The gospel is about when someone says, I'm sorry, how do we respond? Because both of those are really important, right? It's important for us to say, I'm sorry, but it's just as important to say, I forgive you. And this is actually a great thing to do that sometimes can help even more, is when you need to tell someone you're sorry. Say you've hurt your brother, your sister, your friend, or teacher, or parent, or whoever. Say, I'm sorry for this. But then ask the question, do you forgive me? Because then you can hear, and it gives them an opportunity to be able to say, yes, I forgive you. And isn't that so good to hear that? Instead of just saying, I'm sorry, and then we go away, it's so much better to say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And to hear the person say, I do forgive you. It hurt, yes, but I forgive you. So let's look at this gospel today. Peter, he comes before Jesus, and Peter's just kind of a funny guy, because Peter sometimes thinks he has all the answers. Have you ever had that before? Be like, I'm going to come up with a really clever question and be able to answer it. And he goes, Jesus, I know that we're supposed to forgive each other. So if my brother sins against me, should I forgive him not just once, but 7 times? And Peter was like, that's a pretty good answer. But Jesus says something even more. He says, actually, Peter, you need to forgive him not just 7 times, which is a big number, right? But 7 times 70. So what do you think that is? Any of you that are doing multiplication right now? 7 times 7 is, okay. What is it? Keep going, keep going. This is a tough one, though. Think of what is 7 times 7. 7 times 7 is... No. It's close. Close to 40. 7 times 7 is 40. Yes. Okay, so 49, and then you add the 0 because it's 70 times 7. 490 times. That's a lot of times. That's more times than the entire year, because the year has 365 days. 490 times. Now, what if you reach 490? Are you like, okay, well, I'm done? Well, actually, Jesus is using this word to say, you need to always forgive and never ever stop. Because the number 7 is a special Bible number that means perfect. But Jesus is saying, I want you to love in a super perfect way. So 7, perfect number, times 70, which means never ever stop forgiving. There's never a time when we can say, you know what? You used all your forgiveness certificates or your forgiveness coupons, no more forgiveness for you. Wouldn't that be scary? Like if we did that to God and God's like, well, you only have 5 more times and then sorry, no more forgiveness. Or imagine confession. Imagine if I was right over here hearing your confessions here and I said, you only have 1 more shot. And if not, no more confession. Wouldn't that be crazy? But would I ever do that? No. Because God's mercy, this is what Pope Francis said. It's so cool. Pope Francis said, God never gets tired of forgiving us. Like even if sometimes we might get tired, because it's like, oh, I got to forgive you again and again and again. And Jesus is saying, I can help you learn how to forgive like I forgive. Because God never gets tired of forgiving. His mercy is always fresh. It never gets old. But then he says, you need to learn how to forgive like me. Because I've forgiven you so much. The way that we can learn, if we're ever having trouble forgiving someone, we can go to how God forgived us. And that's what this whole parable is about. So remember, we have this man, and he owes a huge amount. You know how much that is? It would be like, imagine, it would be something like $600 billion. So imagine trying to pay that back. Do you think you could pay that back? No, not at all. This person owes like that much. And he's so sorry because he's like, wow, everything that I have is going to be sold. Even my family is going to be sold. And so he goes and he says, please be patient with me. And the master, it says that he was moved with compassion. He wanted to forgive him all of that loan. So he said, that $600 billion that you owe me, I'm going to forgive it completely. You don't have to pay it back. He was free. He didn't have to worry about having everything sold. Do you think he should have been happy? Do you think he should have acted maybe more merciful towards others? But what did he do? He found one of his friends that owed him a smaller amount. It was like $50. That's still a lot, right? You know, if your friend owes you $50, but he could pay that back, right? Not $600 billion. He was forgiven $600 billion, but this guy owed this same person $50. And then he takes the guy who owes him $50 and says, pay me back what you owes me. And then the person says the exact same thing that he said to his master. Please be patient, forgive me. But then what did that man do? He said, I'm not going to forgive you. And he threw him into prison. Now, some of the other servants, they saw this, and they were like, this is messed up. This guy was given forgiveness, and he didn't show forgiveness. And so they told the master, and what do you think the master said? Well, that's great. Good job. He said, "You wicked servant. I treated you with such love, but you weren't able to treat your friend with the same kind of love." And then it said, he handed him over to the torturers. Is that a nice place to go? No. But what do you think that means? Well, it means when we hold on to unforgiveness, and maybe you've had this experience where you're like, I don't want to forgive, I don't want to forgive, I don't want to forgive. Do you ever feel kind of bad inside? You're like holding on to that. And someone once said, it's like taking like a coal from the fire. Have you ever had like fireplaces, or when you go camping, you have charcoal fires? Don't try this at home, but imagine like taking your hand, putting it in there, holding on to this like glowing charcoal, putting it next to your heart and saying, I'm going to keep it here forever. Do you think that would be kind of torturing? So it's not God that's being mean and like, bringing him over to the torturers, but it's saying, if you hold on to this unforgiveness, if you hold on to this and are not willing to forgive, you're just going to hurt yourself. So the Lord is saying, forgive from your heart, so that you don't have to be tortured. We torture ourselves when we aren't willing to forgive the person who's hurt us. It can be hard to forgive the person who's hurt us, but that's where we come to Jesus' kind of love. 70 times 7. And we say to Jesus, who forgave us from the cross, teach me to always forgive and never to hold on to unforgiveness, because it'll always burn us.